Alright, let's continue visiting the outskirts of Katorga 12 now that Comrade Deji is joining us for this not very pleasant looking. I forgot what rating this game
Yeah, I'll tell you how
has.
you really feel about me. Yeah.
Dej, I don't think you're dead yet, so that was not referred to you.
I don't know. Guys, I quite like the look of this place. The decor is very unique.
That's a
Yeah,
pretty
it's
good
very
compliment.
7th gen.
You see, that's a good compliment Tio gave you. He doesn't
Very
think you're dead yet.
Einsteinian. I'm actually curious. Have you actually, again, I know that it sounds a bit pretentious, but I can assure you they're anything but not, and they're mostly used for, for people to brag themselves about. But have you actually seen, like, a movie, and I do mean a good potential movie, because I know that me, Pedro, and Dej have seen recently a Russian movie that was not really good. But have you actually seen potentially a good looking at least Russian movie, like the one done by Eisenstein?
I have seen a Russian film from like the mid-90s. I just can't remember what it was called now.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the media industry produced by Russia and states that were part of the ex-Soviet Union, all the East European, area, are surprisingly interesting.
I know what it's called now. Burned by the Sun.
I don't think I saw that one.
I've heard, but I have heard terrible things about its sequel. Burned by the Sun, the first one, came out in 1994, and it was directed by a guy named Nick and starring Nikita Mikhailkov. And it was about 135 minutes long, and it was a war movie.
Yes, sorry, go on.
The sequel came out in 2010, and for some reason, I have no idea why, it lasted 338 minutes.
That's one thing that you need to know, Waves. It's not always like this, but a lot of movies that come from Russia or Eastern Europe love to be very lengthy. Not necessarily
Over 5.5 hours?
Not really for the sake of art, but mostly just because they want to tell a long story. That's pretty much it. It's unconventional, potentially to a fault. Like I know.
See, Labs, this is why of all of us, you're the one that should relate to York the most, because you do the same thing with the movie stuff, and unlike York, you have your own personal 4 Zacks instead of just 1. So
what does that mean exactly?
How York talks movie trivia with Zach in Deadly Premonition. So you have 4 Zacks in all of us. So
yeah, that recording suggested that someone got cornered bad.
That's because we entered into a school, which means we get to see how the staff of Katorga 12 was actually handling the young generation. As explained by the briefing at the beginning, the Soviet Union was so generous that it was actually allowing entire families to be. The idea behind it is that, you instead of just taking workers and having forcibly go them on the island and being separated from their families, bring the entire family, and the state will actually accommodate for that. That's on paper, it's a good thought process. But if you know anything about the Soviet Union, the execution is something to be desired, and we're about to see the results. But for example, exactly like I said, what they teach children in school. Children in the schools, and exactly how they decide to actually, handle the non-personnel on the island. Again, as we see in the beginning, there seemed to be some kind of organization, but taking again a page from Bioshock, it's more of a case of the system was supposed to work in a specific way, but instead, sadly, did not.
Told us the equipment they're installing at the school is safe, but I'm worried. I have a friend who works at one of the animal testing labs, and he told me E99 mutates living flesh. How could they expose the children to something?
Yeah, for starters, they experiment the effects of E99 by putting in the food of the school. Like, I don't even have a comment for that. It's just classic. I don't think.
Heck, even the
okay.
Umbrella Corporation frowned on certain things involving kids.
Even in general, Joe. But let's try to stay on the point of the direct comparison of this, because I don't think, aside from the little girls, I don't think there were actual children in Rapture. So I don't think children were actually exposed to the plasmids. I don't think. Sure, we have again the little girls, but it was more a case of it. It was literally a case of being directly connected to the plasmid experiments, rather than being Andrew Ryan was experimenting on children to see how the plasmid worked.
Well, given what we learned in Bioshock 2, some of those girls were flipping kidnapped.
True. Well, it's something that we know already from 1, because if I
Also-
recall correctly, the Doctress actually tells us.
Also, we do know that there were kids down in Atlas. Sorry.
True.
Yeah. Because
True. I think again, it's actually been a while since I actually played at least the first Bioshock. We too actually got to know one of my friends who actually did play it, so he told me the story. How it was it about Infinite? I actually did try it a bit, because there was a time where one friend was actually sharing the same PlayStation account, and since he subscribed a bit to PS Plus, he actually did got the game for a bit and let me try out. So there is that. Okay, I think there were actually children in Colombia, but they were not instead exposed to. God, I forgot what the power-ups in that one are called.
I think it was like.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Well, I see that it not worked out. At least they followed the procedure.
Yeah, I mean, the imagery of this movie in this game is just lovely.
I do wonder if maybe they're trying a little too hard with the edgy imagery, which to be fair,
Again, I will save this for actually later when it becomes more apparent. But in some cases, it was supposed to be slightly worse on that.
let me put it like this. I do feel like this is trying to be Bioshock but ramped up to 11. Not to say Bioshock didn't have gruesome imagery. Oh, it did. But I feel like what Bioshock had was definitely a good sense of restraint, which in some cases helped make the terror all the more palpable by leaving stuff up to the imagination.
One big difference, it was also acting slightly on a neutral ground. Rapture was a place where Andrew Ryan asked literally everyone in the world who felt the stimulation and the need of escaping society to actually live there without rules and regulation. That's why you see people from all backgrounds. If I recall correctly, the artist is French. The artist,
Rapture is from Infinite, right?
Nope,
No.
it's from the first. Columbia is instead radically based on the Confederacy. But let me get on point from the first game. So instead, this tries to showcase instead, the typical life of the Soviet Union back during the Cold War, and apply to a context similar to Bioshock, but alone this. It's never actually explained how it's only here, but again, similar to Vibranium in the Marvel Universe, probably just a local meteorite. Surprised they did not tie this to the Tunguska event. Again, the E99 kind of does whatever the pod wants. So it's you're kind of generic MacGuffin. Babushka, no!
Yeah, hopefully it won't generate something worse.
Huh. Sure, why not?
I wonder.
Knowing that E99 will protect us from the evils of the West and make the Soviet Union a safe and dominant superpower.
Spasiba. Moving on. So yeah, again, this game is taking more of a bias approach, while the first Bioshock, again, since it was taking inspiration from the first, System Shock 1 and 2, it was basically where it was the idea where, the setting itself was fictional and more focused, rather than, taking something from the real world and trying to be even a parody of it.
Force us to eat the food they put in front of us. We can't trade with anyone. Not that I feel like eating much. My stomach has been hurting a lot lately.
Again, the effects on E99 on children. Though again, we don't really see mutated ones, thankfully. Yeah, that is also a good point for me to mention something else. I did hint at that in the first part, but yeah, one thing that this game does, which it's kind of understandable for the time it was made, though I will mention in a second how it's also slightly not, is the idea of having the main cast, including for characters originating from the Soviet Union and Russia, be voiced still by American-based voice actors, which again, it's not something that it has never happened before. It has happened before and it has happened after this game, so it's not really that much of a new thing. But as I mentioned in the previous part, they did actually have quite a lot of, Russian and Eastern European-based voice actors, but they're basically mostly relegated to just voicing basically mooks, be doing the mooks grunts, with some repetitive one-liners, mind you, which does feel kind of a waste, especially because there are a lot actually of Russian-based voice actors who know how to perfectly speak English or with an accent if need be. So I don't really know what was the thought process, but considering the game had kind of a troubled development cycle on its own, I get the idea it was one of the last things that Activision decided to do for the sake of not having to spend too much on the game budget.
I'm pretty sure A Good Day to Die Hard had actors from Russia who spoke good English.
But yeah, one thing that's a bit of a constant that happened even before something weird, the weird thing that changed, as we saw in the previous part, oh, Jesus Christ, was an accident, an explosion, which is what the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union decided to actually, pull the plug on the entire project, the T-shirt Singularity. And it showcased the fact that it afflicted the entire island. The mutation of a monster, just drop it. There you go. Again, like I said, your melee attack is basically there just for the sake of it. It really does nothing. So one thing that we need to discover once we get reunited with with the rest of our platoon is to actually just puzzle together what happened. Now this is an actual decent weapon. Simple assault rifle, basically. It's better on the virtue of just doing more damage to the enemy. Because again, like I said, the revolver was just laughable in terms of output damage. So, and since this game has a 2-weapon system, you're basically bound to never use it again after this point. Yeah, that's another thing. Again, I'm not sure who exactly has to be blamed, if any blame for that. But again, games around this time need to adopt this approach of limiting yourself out of two weapons only. Again, I get it for the sake of multiplayer balance. That makes sense. But why the single player has to be affected by it? If anything, this kept, started afflicting games that didn't really focus on multiplayer to begin with, like Duke Nukem Forever as well. Again, Doom, games like Doom basically put the basis for your typical shooter by giving you a sort of, not a wheel, but a range of weapons that you can choose at any point, with the trade-off that if you died, you lose at least some of them. Oh, done. There's our comrade, Devlin.
Hey, so we're
At
not
least
all
he
alone
survived.
here, I guess.
No, at the very least he survived.
Unless he's about to die Brad Vickers style.
Thankfully, no, he's actually helping us for this horde. For the time being, we have to cover him up. Again, trust me, I know what you're thinking. Oh god, this is an escort mission. No, not really. This is using Last of Us logic by having your partner virtually invincible, but not doing that much of damage, so you still have to do the heavy lifting. But at least you don't have to worry about,
that's usually...
asses.
I will argue that's usually the best way to go about it, because if it is something like Resident Evil 6 does, because in Resident Evil 6, you can basically have your co-op AI partner do everything for you. Basically, you don't even need to play that game, basically.
I think Resident Evil 5 found at least an idea for a good middle ground with Sheva. Sure, the AI pattern could be better, for lack of a better term, but she can easily handle herself decently, and her damage output is actually pretty decent without having her to carry you over the entire game.
And then, let me put it like this: Resident Evil.
Though, it really gets to a point where you don't even need to worry about the co-op partner. She'll be fine. Don't worry.
Especially because in 6 you're given overpowered characters to begin with.
And then there's Ada's partner character, Agent. That's literally just his name, Agent. The one duo character who is never acknowledged in story, to the point where some people have made fan theories that Agent is just a figment of Ada's imagination.
I was hoping it was gonna be Hunk, but no.
Yeah, it would have been so obvious to make him Hunk, but nope, he's just...
I don't even know what's if it's more of a joke, it's not a joke, but a joke towards a small amount of trolling for the fans that Capcom treats Hunk as this cool character, but it's mostly relegated to not necessarily canon content.
You know what I think, Jova?
What?
I think lately there's been this thing in fiction where creators are afraid that they think going with the obvious thing will be seen as a bad idea, and everyone will be bashing the product, calling it predictable, so they do something else.
That does seem to be a mentality with some creators.
Well, yeah, that's where the whole subverting your expectations thing came from.
Alright, let's see if this propaganda projector does something different.
Search and rescue teams better be on their friggin' way right now.
Oh good, a safety PSA.
Nolan, quiet, I'm trying to watch this film.
Watch out, Uncle Sam is going to get you.
Looks like a discount Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
It's if you know anything about propaganda, that's exactly what they will do. They will literally demonize an entire country. Not necessarily just in this case. It was literally all over the place for the sake of giving the message: the enemy is bad. Go and make your country proud by defeating them.
Egg.
I'm wondering if that was supposed to be the pun of it. Why do I get the feeling almost everyone we meet on this island had exactly that happen to them?
Look at that picture, make the scientists make they look like there. Go and spread a plague, see if I care.
That's...
I guess the movie got broken.
Oh.
Excuse me?
What? Because of what?
Apparently the Russian leader is called Nikolai Demichev, but last I checked in history books, that's not what happened. Well, I guess we'll need to figure out more later.
So at least now we've got a partner character to help us.
Okay, here's instead another weapon for us. The shotgun.
I love how that corpse just goes, "Here you go," and then falls over.
Yeah, basically. Okay, outside of Doom, I've never been particularly a fan of shotguns. Not necessarily, out of bias alone, but mostly out of, complacement gaming syndrome. Shotguns are very good for one purpose, being close. And for a shooter, being close to the enemy is mostly your fault to begin with. So if I want to, be good at damaging the enemy from a distance, I might as well just stick to, something at the very least like an assault rifle. Like, sure, if I have no other options, I will have the shotgun as a last kind of defense, like a showcase for the Battleship video game, but that's pretty much it.
Open the door, then cover me.
Okay.
Why don't you hold open the
FBI,
door?
open up!
You're under arrest!
All clear.
For everything. Yeah, actually, I haven't told you this, Dej. The composer, well, at least one of the composer for this game, actually was one of the composer for Bloodborne, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Again, the score for this game is not super memorable, really. But it does the job it's supposed to do. It's not something that you will hum immediately at all. But again, I heard technically worse scores or even blender ones. But again, it's just there. The other composer is called Charlie Clauser, and let me see what.
Oh
else
yeah,
he did.
yeah, the Saw movies.
Oh, the one you did mention in the previous part. My bad.
Yeah.
After this, the only other video game for he composed was co-composed for was Evolve. Alas. If you forgot, Jova, it's the game that the people who did Left 4 Dead were trying to make for an UMP in terms of a hunting kind of game that was made by 2K, but unfortunately it did not catch on. It was just left there to hang for a while. Then it was tried to be salvaged by being made free to play, but it was still not enough, and eventually it was pulled the plug. And it's a shame because I kind of like some of the ideas where they put there, the idea of, one player in multiplayer having to play the actual beast and the others that play the hunters and having to do some kind of cat and mouse situation. But again, it had a couple of things going against it, like lack of polish and some repetitiveness at launch that did not work.
Their more recent game was Back 4 Blood.
Yeah, the one that Warner Bros. Published, and while it had also a bit of a rocky start, it seems to be faring a bit better.
Well, I mean, now Turtle Rock, the developers are owned by Tencent.
Yeah, another one.
Like half of all new developers are these days, apparently.
Even older ones that lives. Tencent owns the stakes to a lot of companies. Yeah, you cannot fool me. I played games like Dead Space, I don't know exactly when an enemy is picking out.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, by the way, you can just leave Nolan North hanging there and say reloading every couple of times.
Why do they leave him stuck in purgatory?
Don't worry, I'm sure he's on a tropical. He'll be on a tropical island or something.
There's the radio tower. Let's contact Titan 1 and get out of this circle jerk.
Yeah.
Circle jerk? What are we? Is this basically a representation of Reddit?
But yeah, the goal, again, as mentioned in the previous part, the goal is to get to the radio tower, so hopefully we can actually contact Mother Base and actually understand what's going on.
This is what happened. This section here is what happened in the Reddit of Squared Circle after All Out 2020. Complete chaos because of those horrible moments.
I think this is Keep Portal, actually. Let me check just to be sure the entire cast. Again, like I said, they have a lot of actual Russian voice actors in order to, actually deliver for the books. But they equally have, traditional voice actors for most of the other roles, like the audiologues. In fact, we did hear Steve Blum in the previous part as well. So,
Go check out that guard
Alright.
post. Maybe there's another switch.
all right, sure. Let me see. There we go. Down north, Steve Blum, Graham McTavish. Wait, I think Graham McTavish is an actual more of an actor than a voice actor. Let me see. Oh no, actually, he did voice the right. He was Dwalin in the Hobbit trilogy. But if I recall correctly, he was also he was the voice actor also for Dracula in the Castlevania Netflix series. That was a good role.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah, I really do like Dracula on Test.
even now, strictly just in
Season-
terms of voice as well.
Yeah. Season 1 was a good start, if maybe a little too short. Season 2, pretty good. Had some missed opportunities, though.
Despite some minor differences, Season 2 is probably the most faithful to the games, as it basically finds the good excuse to recreate the plot of Castlevania 3.
And then
And even so, like I
and
said,
that leads into Lament of Innocence.
not exactly. Even at the end of Season 4, we really don't have the basis for Lament of Innocence, because they changed so much of the main characters for that game.
the one thing we get from Lament of Innocence is seeing a portrait of Leon in Season 2.
Oh, sorry, no, I got confused with Curse of Darkness, my bad. But yes,
Curse of
when it comes to
Darkness is the
when
one
it comes to
that...
Lament of
No,
Innocence, yes, we do get
yeah.
the portrait of Leon. But no, Curse of Darkness is the one from which the two side characters originate from, the Smiths.
Yeah, that. Wow, I can't believe I confused those two. Yeah.
Well, don't worry. Again, it's probably at this point, it's probably only a matter of time until we get them re-released in those particular 3D games are released in some kind of fashion. I'm not sure if Konami can get some extra profit by releasing the N64 games, but I know that the Legacy of Darkness is actually better than the base N64 one, but I'm not sure if it's
Is
worth
that the
it.
Dreamcast one or?
No, I forgot what the Dreamcast one was supposed to be called, but Legacy of Darkness is the other N64 game. The two were the first one was literally just called Castlevania, but people call it Castlevania 64 for convenience sake, and it's bad. Like, I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I was told.
I'm not even sure it can have quality of life improvements that can make it work, to be honest. But then we say Troy Baker, Dmitry Dyachenko, Andrei Hughes, Boris Kievsky, Christoph Konrad. Yeah, like you said. And yeah, if there you go, Kirk Thornton is also listed for additional voices, so that was probably him. Alright, let's open up the gate. Go on.
Although, on the topic of Castlevania, I know that the next season that they're making is about Richter.
Rondo Blood.
Yeah,
supposedly.
I'm gonna be honest, okay, so after Season 2, the Castlevania Netflix series kind of went on a weird trip with Season 3. Like...
I haven't finished Season 3.
Season 4 managed to put things a bit back on board. Oh, cool, Sniper Rifle. Things a bit back on board. And as a conclusion, it's fine, even if there are one or two things I wasn't super particularly fond of. But again, I will definitely accept it.
I feel like... okay, here's the thing about the Castlevania series, I feel like they were beloved at first, and they loved it. The problem was that, after they essentially got to the climax of the game that it was based off of, they apparently had troubles deciding what to do. Now, the obvious thing to do would have been, well, simple. Continue it into the other Belmonts here and there. That is not what they did. And what they did was,
What I do wonder is exactly how much of the development team had control. Oh, and Chopper. Development team had control over what we could do, and how much Netflix was telling them, no, in terms of marketability, it's best if you keep these characters, in this specific manner.
It really does make me
wonder.
wondering, whoa, what the heck is going on in the sky there?
Aurora Borealis?
Yes, at this time of day, at this time of year, in this part of the world, localized entirely on
within
this
the
one
red sky.
island.
Yes.
Wow.
Can we go there?
I guess it's on our list.
You know,
Again, the first thing
either
to
that,
do is sorry,
it's,
go
e-
on.
it's either that or it's Doctor Doom's Skybeam again.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the dark evil dimension hopping for Crash to Insanity. You know the best way you
So
can.
what with Evil Crash?
You know the
Yes,
best way you
Steve.
can tell when you're in a mixed up evil universe? When the sky's red.
Well,
The
but
sky's red when there's a red bandicoot and when
either when you are in, or sorry, when you're about to get into one, or when the one you're existing in is getting fucked by DC history. That's an actual plot point.
Pretty much.
Yes, Pedro?
For as much as that might indignate you, maybe, Joe, but considering how fiction loves to use the color red to symbolize evil, so.
Although, we have just as many cases where red is used as the color of heroism, like in Transformers.
Sure. Yeah, true.
And hell, in Power Rangers, literally the leader of all
Okay.
good is the one decked out in red.
In this game, you have two types of upgrade. One, when you find these particular cases, which counts as each as a unit, you can put them to one of these weapon lockers, and you can use them to actually upgrade parts of any kind of weapon that you want. And the good news is that you can use this same locker to actually switch your arsenal from the weapons that you have discovered at this point. So in terms of actually giving you accessibility to the weapons, at the very least, the game understands to actually, give you a hand rather than limit. Again, it's still a bit of a dick move to just limit you to the two weapon system, but at the very least, it's trying to accommodate for that in some kind of fashion. So I will give it this over a couple other games that don't even give you the courtesy of that. And yes, you can upgrade basic stuff, like the clip size, the power, or for example, the reloading speed. So pretty standard stuff, and it kind of incentivizes exploration. Again, uh-oh.
Steve Blum? Is that you again?
Yeah.
Who the hell is this?
It's Steve Blum! Don't you know? The guy who literally goes out of his way to be in everything.
I'm not sure
he
he's
can.
here to give us an autograph.
Hey, look, there's some help.
Maybe, actually, no, I do it. It's not going to be a guild.
Okay, so much for those guys coming to help us.
Press L3 for temporal dilation.
Yes, as explained in the brief description of the weapon, the sniper rifle has an E99 type of augmented weapon system, which allows the user to, just for a very limited moment, to slow down time in order. It's equivalent to, the hold your breath. It's a very common mechanic in a lot of shooters when it comes to using sniper rifles. It's just that in this game, it's given a bit of flavor in order to incentivize the sci-fi aspect of it. Brilliant.
So I guess they give us also human enemies. Well,
Yes,
non-human.
specifically, Soviet soldiers.
I guess that can help break up the
And
monotony.
like I said,
of just
this is where
monsters.
the Russian voice actors, voice lines do come in. Because they're not even translated or given subtitles. If you don't know Russian, you don't actually understand what these people are saying. Although it's pretty easy to understand, basic commands like, say, he's using a grenade, he's taking cover. It's a one case where, despite not knowing the language, you get the idea what the soldiers are saying by reacting to an action that you're performing. Unfortunately, there's kind of too many of them, and unlike in Resident Evil 4, we cannot actually hold the fort too much. Doesn't help that they have even the chopper.
That's a bother.
Basically, what you need to do is to defend the place until actually Delvin actually tells you to retreat. But you still need to kill, a good amount of soldiers before actually doing that. So it's not like you just have to wait and that's it. Yeah. There you go.
Retreat from your position.
Like I said, this game loves to add the backward R to simulate
And
cities.
the differently drawn N.
Shit.
And that's it, we're dead.
Well, we'll actually see what happened to us in the next part, so see you for that.
Yeah, we died.
Yeah.
Ta-ta.